Today I'm releasing something a little bit different. It's a working session that I had with someone who's recently started using Logseq, and we're going to go through some of the nuts and bolts of getting started in Logseq. It's a wide-ranging discussion, and we look at the philosophy of having one graph versus multiple graphs. We get into indentation and structuring your database effectively for better search and recall. Admittedly, it's not very well structured. We jump around a lot, but I've provided quite a few timestamps to hopefully help you navigate that, and maybe you can find some of the questions that you have been searching or wondering about. I've also made reference to a couple of resources that have been very helpful for me in my journey to getting started on Logseq. Those will be linked in the notes below. As for my workshopee, his name is Leigh. He's a friend of mine who is a journalist, and he is releasing or publishing video journalism on South African social political stories. He's released a very interesting video on youth unemployment, which is a major crisis in South Africa. If you're a South African viewer or an international viewer, I think you might find it very interesting. I've provided a link to that below and a link to his channel, so check it out. I'm thinking of doing another one of these in the future, so it might have a different structure, different guests, but let me know what you think, and hopefully this is of value to you.
That's my current graph. I'll tell you, there's some problems. For example, I didn't really know how to I see that it starts usually in this journal mode where it gives you the day, and then I kind of built it from that. So you'll see somewhere between the 11th and the 12th, I started to build things, and this one's kind of isolated. I need to bring this guy back here. But 12 is kind of became the front page, and then it just sort of, I moved it to the reading list, and the reading list kind of then links out to, okay, that's the actual reading list. That thing also happens where it sort of does that, which is a little bit annoying instead of taking me directly there, but I see the function.
But you can turn it off, eh?
Okay, that's useful. Then you'll see, I told you, the dirty, the dirty PDFing, that's just a picture that I took using
the screenshotting.
The snipping tool. Highlighted it before I took the picture because it's specific. I know when I go back and make the video now, and let's say I want to use one of these sections, what I'll do is I'll go back to the PDF, then Control F, find that particular part, and then okay, that's a particular part of the PDF I want to use, and then usually then it becomes a process for the video. So then I'll extract that particular page, then draw it into Illustrator to make sure that the quality isn't lost, then export it from Illustrator and draw it into Adobe After Effects. And then at After Effects, you can do the whole highlighting animations. It's quite a process. But yeah, not super efficient. And then usually the reading lists goes to sometimes it goes to the questions. So sometimes when I have questions, then it'll come here. And then the idea is that the questions should eventually link to the people to speak to. That's the way I imagine it, because these questions need a home. So I'll have a question about this particular study that was done, and then I'll be okay, but who do I get to answer this question? Sometimes you can just Google the answer, but sometimes the answer is more you actually have to speak to someone. So then that should then go to the people to speak to, and then these two kind of intermesh. So yeah, that's a lot of information.
I think that I think the point of departure, I should say that there's no right way to do any of these things.
Yeah.
Which is, but in my mind, I see sort of a pattern emerging across different fields, and the one is academia, and there's a guy called Joel Chan, and he's got did I send you his synthesis workflow?
That was the last video you sent me, I think. I haven't had time to work through
it. It's a long one, and it's complex, but what he does is he asks these questions are pages in themselves. Big questions are pages, and then he builds out in blocks the different components of that, and then underneath those different blocks, you can then say who do I need to speak to, and then you build out the answer progressively, and that can all be in a page. So the way that he does it is he has observation notes, which is if he looks at a paper and like has a general observation from it, he'll put that down in a block. So I don't know, whatever the social relief of distress grant, like this might be the basic income grant might be like a page in and of itself. Like, what is it saying? Sort of like what you're doing.
Yeah.
But instead of saying the Taylor report, like more like how am I answering the question? And that's something which I'm trying to do in my own database, but just isn't working so well because I don't really have these questions to answer. Like it's not a specific workflow, but for this, like I see it's very much like a researching publication workflow, in the sense that it's like very defined questions. Your questions can expand and like over time, but it's not. It's more conducive to that. And then the people to ask, again, like you can like indenting is super important. So if you have like a question and there's more than one person to ask, you could then say like have a heading key questions, and then question one might not necessarily, you don't have to put that in a block, whatever, and then person to ask, and then that's another tag in and of itself. So not like BIG person to ask. Then what you could do is you could do a search which then says key questions, and then you filter by page or whatever, and then you'll see the people to ask for the different questions. So like maybe I should open up a Logseq example just to you can change the color as well if you
mean from the black to the white background.
And there's other themes, but
I quite like this theme. Makes me feel like, I don't know, calm yet new agey.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen quickly.
Cool.
Screen 2, that's the right one. So, like, hypothetically, you have a paper you write. Let me just say basic income grant. So if I go there, and then I can say questions underneath that, and then I could like have each different question either as like how does this work? Why do we do it? Something, okay. And then people to answer, people to then that could be Jane, and this could be people to answer. This could be Jeff.
Okay, that's really, what you did is really interesting. It's a little bit of voodoo for me.
Okay, so
let me just start with, first question is, so the basic income grant, that would be like, if I think about it like like that's now a new project, right? But you have to create it in the like daily journal page.
You don't actually. That was just like a sort of shortcut for me, because you can delete this now. If I delete that, and I go back to the page that I was on, it's still there. So you can create another page. Like if you can use a shortcut Control K, or you just use the search thing over there. And this allows you to create a page. So test page here, and you can see that it's got the option new page. So then that's like a new project.
Okay.
And if I go to my graph view, actually I got so many like random things here. Let me actually just start a new one. Add new graph. I'll do it on desktop just for fun. Demo. Okay. Then I can say, cool. Basic income grant. That's the project.
Yeah.
And then if I just go back to that one that I had and copy paste this. Sorry, I'm doing this very quickly, but like I've just got multiple graphs, but I think having everything in one graph is the best approach, so that you whoopsie.
So you mean like your whole life in one graph?
My whole life is in one graph, yeah.
Oh my word, that would freak me out.
Why? Okay, basic income grant. The idea is that it's like you just use filters and queries to find the information and like see the different parts of it. Yeah. So, oopsie, let me move that down there.
That would be like bringing different parts of my family and my liberal friends and everybody together for a wedding, like that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
With my ideas.
So if I go to questions now,
Yeah.
you can see, well, it's not refreshing. Let me just refresh here. So I just said Control R and that refreshes.
Okay.
And then that allows me to refresh. See, sometimes the stuff is where are my notes? Oh, journals, built-in pages, orphan pages. Maybe because I've only got like one page. All pages. No. Why?
I think this happened to me the other day and I almost threw out my computer. Yeah.
Okay. Basic income grant. But if I go there now, oh no, basic income grant. That's just a little trick. Basic income grant. Not basic income grant, sorry. Re-indexing.
Re-indexing.
Yeah. But now, all pages, there we go. Okay.
Re-indexed, you found a page.
There we go. So there's basic income grants.
Okay.
There we go. So like, I can then, I've got the questions that I have there, but then I can also filter it where I've got people, or people to call. Or let me say, like maybe, let me think of another workflow. As if I've got people that I want to call, I can then approach it. I click on people, and then I can see, like, if I had two different projects, let me maybe go to different projects. What is another project? Social housing. Let's do that. Social housing, and then I say questions, and then this is a question, and people here as well. Hypothetically, if I then go to people, I can then filter by like which project I want to call people from. So that it's like, and that's the graph approach. So if I go to the graph view, you'll see there that I've got questions linked to basic income and social housing, and basic income grant leads to people as well. So that's one approach. But I realize I'm jumping very much into the weeds, as is my style, and maybe it's not being the most valuable for you. So.
No, I mean, it's an interesting consideration. So what you're saying is, if you do it, this is only possible if you do it all on one graph that you can then filter by.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I created a new graph for every project, I couldn't then filter by people for.
No.
No, I'm just curious. It's too, because like it becomes like a design philosophy, right? So how do you want to design this? And maybe you play around with two different approaches. So you try like everything on one graph for a while, try everything like it's separate in its small container.
I think the idea behind having everything on one graph is that it's seamless. Like You don't have to think, where did I store this approach, or where did I store this thing? Because doing that, you're basically limiting yourself to the folders structure of your desktop or of your computer system, like at a really early stage, and doing that is like the opposite of the graph approach, where it's like I can resurface information at any time that I want by just using keywords and like good tagging. But yeah, I mean, the thing, you've already got those components there that we like, child support grants here is highlighted, and the green paper on SS and RR 2021 is highlighted, and that's building those little elements that you'll be able to filter and query later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I'm gonna like contemplate this weekend while I'm hiking, like how to, because on one hand it does make you feel almost like anxious to have so much stuff on one graph. Like I like everything in a small container, but I understand what you mean about the searchability of it and like getting back to it. Like I think in some ways, if I see something and it's like organized in one container, it almost prompts the queries. Whereas if I'm seeing like just everything in one graph, like I might not organically come up with the query. It's almost...
that sounds counterintuitive to me, if I'm honest. Like having more things that are potentially connected, like not being in one box feels like I can make better queries. But better links between different things.
Definitely.
I'm just thinking of like ways that I can, or that we can like test the different like theories.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I need to like definitively resolve this today. Like what you're saying about like if you start with a good structure, it makes it better, like rather than going back and then deciding you want to change it later. I think also maybe would make me, I think if you could isolate certain nodes, you have one big graph, but then what you do is, let's say it's great if I can search cross stuff and come up with references, that's amazing. But if I can just look at the contents, like let's say once the basic income grant project is done, and I want to go back to something specifically related to the basic income grant project, I can't remember necessarily everything that I wrote. If I have a decent contents page where it contains all of the pages that really pertain to that. So for example, things that might be like, I don't think I would ever put like all the questions I have on different projects in one page. Like it would always be separate. Like it would always be questions, unemployment questions, BIG questions, social housing. Just because, like they generally are not going to relate to each other. Experts might, but
I feel this is the one I've logged what you said. This is just a disadvantage of Google Meets when I try and do the recording, or when I share my own screen, it doesn't show the video stuff, because I think the video stuff is interesting. But anyways, let me share my screen, because I think there's like what you said, there's a really interesting alternative where there's two things. Like if I do everything in my journals, or I can actually do it anywhere, but if I tag something with question, like question and social income, social housing, and I just say, where is this not working? And then maybe I've got like a questions with basic income grants. Why is government not changing, or whatever? Changing, just examples. Like this is the equivalent of what I'm doing there is going in Excel and saying, let me just do this here, is saying, why is government not changing? And where is this not working? And then saying projects, and that would be whatever, social income, social housing. So I'm just doing shorthand now.
Yeah.
And basic income.
Yeah, BIG.
Yeah, let me just use that, BIG. And then the type, it's saying this is a question, and this is a question.
Yeah.
So this is the exact same as what I've done here.
Yeah.
And then so you can do it in stream of consciousness, and then come back to it, and just by using your filters.
So it's a very, very basic question here. The text in blue, that's not a page that you've created, that's a tag that you've created. Am I correct?
So a tag is a page.
Okay.
By definition, yeah.
Yeah. So they would then appear in both tags / pages, those two questions.
Yes, yeah. So if I go to questions, I've now got the questions social housing, where is this not working, questions basic income grant. But then the cool thing that I can do is I can then filter that out and say social housing, and then you can see that's basically doing the equivalent of this, where it's like, okay, block, I don't know if this is coming through, 8, and then filtering out for projects, social housing. That's the equivalent thing that I'm doing.
So for example, let's say, so BIG and unemployment are similar because they're both economic issues. They might share like a similar experts. So what you could do then is you could say questions like, is it affordable? And maybe the question, is it affordable? And then another one like IEJ, which is the Institute for Economic Justice. It's like a left-leaning, like economic institute. And then you have, and then maybe, then you'd probably tag it with unemployment as well. So you'd have 3, really. So let's say.
Well, then you could do this, where you say like questions, IEJ. If you're doing a stream of consciousness, you could say, I'm going to ask them about unemployment. I'm going to ask them about the basic income grants. I'm going to ask them about social housing.
Yeah, but I suppose what I'm saying is, this is more like what would happen over, let's say, the period of 3 months, or how long it takes me to do a project. So that they would all 3 almost be different entries. So each one would maybe be like question, IEJ, basic income grant. Then next month, like, or 2 months down the line, it would be.
That is what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Would be the same as going questions, IEJ, social housing. That, like, if I enter information under here, example indented, let me just do that. And if I enter information here, example inline, these 2 things will both show up. Let me create another page, which is like January 21st, 2021. That's a journal page as well. Did you know the thing about opening the left sidebar?
Yeah, I remember. I did see that in one of your videos.
Yeah, that's my favorite. So
you just that's really useful.
And then just like dragging and dropping, and yeah. So now you can see this is another journal page. It's only other journal page. But then I want to go, okay, cool. I'm speaking to IEJ tomorrow, and I've got these different questions here. But I only want to speak to them about social housing. So let me just filter social housing, and then, okay, cool, yeah. That's fine. I can see the inline example, but then I see there's something here, and I can say, oh, there's the indented question that I wanted to ask him. And that's because on this page, this block, this bullet point here, inherits it inherits the parent structure. So this question IEJ are the two parent blocks. This is the child block, social housing, and this is like inheriting. As the child of social housing, it's inheriting the parents, which are IEJ and questions.
Okay.
So yeah, you could, yeah. I'm jumping sideways here, but you could do this in the social housing grant or the social housing page as well, where you could just say questions. I want to ask IEJ another question. And then when I go to IEJ, this page, I can see there's all these different, like I've entered different questions. They're all in different pages, in different structures. They just have tags and indents, and I can go and find them very easily again.
So another basic question, if you've got an indent and then a page link, that's still like an independent page, but it will be like a child page.
Yes, well, and it's not to say that page is the child in all situations, but it's just saying like this is in this instance. I'm putting this block underneath that combination. So like the first combination is social housing, but I could create another page here. Let me say IEJ. If I go to IEJ, it shows that it's already linked to social housing down there in the linked references section. But I could also say example indent. I could also just put it underneath there. It's like it's the up, whatever you've done in one page isn't like gospel. So
yeah, I understand. So it's organized there, but it can still go and should it be linked to another page, or you could search for it in it's not warehoused in that specific directory.
And then the other question which you asked, which was like the table of contents, like if I go here and I say chapter 1, whatever that would be, chapter 1, chapter 2, oopsie, what am I doing? Chapter 2, chapter 3, and I just hypothetically say like table of contents. I don't even have to like link that. I could then collapse that, and then I could carry on working on my project. Okay, work on projects here, and then now my table of contents has these different things that I can go back to. But the cool thing is now if I go to my graph view, or I can actually go to the graph view of this page. Let me just do that. Page graph, and you can see there social housing. I've got this these chapters which I can go to then.
Crazy.
Yeah, so that's the there's a guy called Nick Marlowe who's got this channel, Linking Your Thinking, and his whole idea is like you create these maps of content, like levels of abstraction, and your lowest Obsidian is the program that he uses. And there it's not really an outline in the sense that you can't do, well, you can do this sort of stuff, but it's not like everything is basically in one note, and you join those different things. An example that I use is like of playing cards. Like if you have a suite of playing cards and you're wanting to like compose different hands, you would then that's a level of abstraction up, but then you could still group those things, like where it's like, say now I had like a set of jacks and a set of kings, that would be like a level of abstraction, but then I could have those being like all male cards, and then I could like that's another level of abstraction. So you're building up from these like really basic atomic units. I'm not doing it that much in my own database. Like I like using the indented outlined approach. Like it helps me understand things a little bit better.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's, yeah. I think I'm very much like a learn by doing sort of person. So like this is very useful, and I think it's gonna I'm gonna try put everything on one graph, tag better, indent better, um, and see sort of where it comes from. Because there's like I could think of like how this would be very advantageous, right? Especially if you I was thinking of two different applications. One would be like when I get to the actual video making part of the process. Often, like I'm making these like these infographics or these like animations, and between projects, because there's like a research component which takes a couple of weeks, and then there's the actual making videos component which takes a couple of weeks. I'll forget how to do certain things in the video component. And then I'll always need to come back. I'll be like, okay, well, how do I like do the highlight animation on a PDF thing? I remember there's like a whole process, but I'll like forget 4 weeks between. Whereas if I had a page that was like highlight animation approach, and then I see there's even like a YouTube embed function and a like time function, right, where you can say where in the video do you need to go, and then I could just like map out the steps, be like, if you forget, just watch this video.
Yeah.
And then like things to avoid. Like I remember when you had this clicked off last time, you spent half an hour not understanding why your animation didn't work. Don't do that again.
I do a similar thing in the form of checklists. I build checklists for different
Oh,
things. I haven't done the one now, which is like turning off my bookmarks, whatever, and like turning off Flux, my that's very very simple approaches. But like I think it's the same holds where you have like it's things that you can refer back to, like they
yeah,
almost reference documents.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's super super useful.
definitely.
I don't know if there's something which might confuse things or makes
Oh,
things a bit easier, but like if you've got different projects,
yeah,
the way that I'm doing it now is I'm entering my different projects as node as like information within this page, like metadata. So the way that you do metadata is you use two colons. So this is type project, whatever. And what that's doing now is it's creating a page projects that I can that links to this page as well. So that this is not being very well explained. And we go basic income grant. This is obviously a separate project as well. So then I can add that type project,
mm,
and then there we go. So now if I go to projects, I can see I've got these two things linked
mm,
as projects. So that's one approach of doing it, which still gives you that sort of
yeah,
it gives you the ability to really easily navigate your things, your
definitely.
graph. But then, and you can see here that there's like my biggest node in my graph is these projects, and
Oh,
that's
yeah,
sort of forming this map of content where it's like starting to like go out already and like create this network.
mm,
There's another way of doing it though, and this I'm not sure if you prefer this way or the other way, but or if you want to do any of them at all. But instead of doing it like this, you can actually use namespaces in your titles, and namespaces is a character that creates a hierarchy. So if I change this to project here, and if I go to my other one, which is BIG, which I can never get to, basic income grants. If I delete this thing here and I go to and I say project, you'll see it's got this hierarchy that is creating here at the bottom.
mm,
So instead of just being linked, it's like, okay, cool, this thing is actually in this folder. So this is not my preferred approach.
mm,
Well, I'm playing around with it a little bit more. But the cool thing here is that when I go to my graph view now, Let me just re-index my page because something seems to have gone wrong. But it changes all instances of that node, so I can find the information like at the highest level. And if I go to my graph view, it's colored that node so that I can very quickly find its projects. So yeah, a lot of people use namespaces. I'm sort of getting into it a little bit more, but not sure if it's going to be a long-term thing or not.
Crazy. Okay, I think let me try this for a few weeks and then see. I'll probably have some new questions.
So if you made it to the end of this video, I really hope that you found it to be worthwhile. Do let me know if you'd be interested in more of these sort of workshop sessions. I'm looking at doing one for a OneNote migration. I think that is a workflow that is super important. And just a note on that, I think, once you get sort of the basics of Logseq down, it's actually about developing your workflows. And that's the really challenging part, trying to find an optimal workflow that works for you. So that's just some of the things that I'm thinking about going forward. So thanks again for watching, and hopefully see you back soon.